Welcome to the Writer Reads Mack and Me, an Odyssey. This is Book 3, Mack and Me, Arach. Chapter 4, The Custody Game. Next time I woke, I was in a med box. Oh, good, I thought, and then I realized I probably wasn't getting out on my own. I tried the implant, but it wasn't in the mood for working, so I guessed I was still on my own. I wondered just how far south the Arach deal with Mack had flown. And then I wondered if they still considered me useful. That thought gave me pause, and I figured it was time for me to get out of the box. A cell would be an improvement, at least on my chances of escape. What it might mean for the mission was another matter. I realized I was still in cuffs when I went to knock on the lid of the box. Well, star-sucking turtlets, I said, loudly, because it made me feel better. When I got out of this, I was going to go a few rounds with Mack. That thought stopped me cold. Mack. Where in all the stars and suns was he? And that was when I remembered that there was supposed to have been instructions dropped with my gear. Oh, crap. At which point the lid to the med box swung open. Max was not the face I expected to see, which doesn't mean I wasn't happy it was there. I stared up at that face and then looked past him, searching for the other face, the one I was terrified of seeing. My movement sent the heart monitors soaring as I tried to climb out of the box, and that was without me seeing the Arach. I kept staring, and he still didn't appear, which was good. Very good. I remembered how to breathe and let myself settle back in the box. Mac watched, waiting until I started to relax. You done? He asked. Done? I managed. Yeah. Maybe. Depends on what happens next. Well, he said, letting down the sides of the box, undoing the cuffs and helping me out. Now I take you out of here to the holding cells, where you'll be tried for treason and sentenced. My heart plummeted and my mind went into free fall. Tried? Treason? Sentenced? To death. I felt like he'd tipped a bucket of iced water over my head. What? At least, that's what I was trying to say. I opened my mouth and no sound came out, so I closed my mouth, swallowed, and tried again. Tried? Mac nodded, pursing his lips. For treason. The instructions in the gear bag were pretty specific. What gear bag? I asked, and the ghost of a smile touched his lips. Are you saying you didn't have a gear bag with you? No, he frowned. So there was a gear bag, he said, and that was when I finally got it. There was a gear bag? Are you telling me you were ported without a gear bag? Yes, I said. I was definitely ported without a gear bag. From a ship overtaken by Arach. Yes, I said again, ported from a ship overtaken by Arach without a gear bag. And where is that ship now? In orbit? I asked, but he shook his head. There is no ship in orbit. Again, my heart went into free fall. No ship? No. I pushed myself off the med box and tried to stand up. No ship? I asked, and I didn't have to pretend to be shocked. I grabbed Mac by the arm. But where's the ship? It's supposed to be there. It can't be gone. I made to walk past him, and he grabbed me by the arm and turned me to face him. There is no ship. I can't be here, I said, my heart going into free fall. There has to be a ship. There was a gear bag. There was? There was. But I didn't have a gear bag. Are you saying the gear bag wasn't yours? I vaguely remembered something about there being a gear bag at the drop site, but there had been a security patrol at the drop site. There couldn't have been a bag. My head started to spin and my knees gave way. Or it had been the wrong site and the bag wasn't mine? I was so confused. Mac caught me, let me settle on the floor. The bag, he insisted, crouching down in front of me. There was no bag, I said. It's not yours? It's not mine. Mac got to his feet. He left me sitting on the floor as he looked across the room. You need to keep looking, he said. She isn't the one you're after. I drew my knees up to my chest and rested my chin on them. I wasn't? The best you can charge her with is illegal immigration. What? I stared up at him, hugging my knees tight as I felt my eyes grow to what felt like the size of small moons. Mack let the silence drag out for a bit longer and then nudged me with the toe of his boot. Or I could take her off your hands. I just hugged my knees tighter and closed my eyes, feeling sick to the stomach. If I didn't know any better, I'd have said he really didn't want to take me. But that couldn't be true, could it? And we should check her implant, said a voice through the speakers. Mac nodded, even though I knew them checking my implant would be about the last thing he wanted them to do. Unless it wasn't Mac. The spiders could change shape. What if this one had changed to look like Mac? What if he was just bartering to get me out of the authorities' hands? It was not a thought I needed, but then neither was the idea that his current behaviour was anywhere near normal. You could? How long is this disablement set to last? A week? I could bring her back in 8 days, start the conditioning process early. How much were you willing to pay to take her off our hands? And I started to breathe again. We'd ended up on a world where corruption held sway. I tucked my relief away out of sight, made a show of looking up, then around at the door, then carefully inching back from him. Mac named a figure that made me gasp. He even let me get a bum's width back before sideswiping me with his boot, knocking me sideways and then planting his boot on my chest and using it to pin me to the floor. There was silence as the voice considered. And you're sure the gear bag isn't hers? This time Mac rolled his eyes. Well, you heard her. She didn't get ported with a bag. That doesn't mean it wasn't there waiting for her. I don't think there's a judge in town who'd believe that, Mac said, and there were undercurrents of warning in his words that I was pretty sure gave his opinion weight. The voice on the other end of the intercom sighed. Fine, Mosh Karak. You can take the illegal immigrant. He could? Wait, didn't I get a say in this? What if I didn't want to go with the crazy man that might only look like Mac? And why was he being called Mosh Karak? Who the fuck was Mosh Karak? The questions tumbled through my mind, but stopped abruptly when Mac reached down and looped my hair around his hand. Up you get, he said, sounding more than pleased with himself. You get to come home with me now. I followed the draw of his hand. Felt like the damn man was going to try and lift my head off if I didn't. I got to go home with him, did I? And I got to do it now. I glared at him and felt him shift his grip to include the collar of my ship's suit. Like that, was it? I glared harder and kicked him in the shins, which was when I discovered some wiseacre had nicked my sodding boots. Easy fix. I grabbed his shirt, spun myself into him, and kneed him in the groin just as hard as I could. I did not get the reaction I was expecting. Well, not exactly. Firstly, because my knee impacted on hard shell and not soft, vulnerable human flesh. Secondly, because Mac grabbed the front of my ship's suit and lifted me clear of the floor, raising me high enough that I could see his mouth when he smiled. High enough that I could see the very non-human mandibles that quivered beneath his human-like skin. I screamed and lashed out a second time, my bare foot striking a chest that was harder than flesh, my fists bruising against the contours of a face that didn't match what I saw. The Mac-shaped creature shook me until my head rattled and set my feet back on the floor. Come, echoed inside my head, but I backpedaled across the cell. I was so thoroughly sick of things not being what they seemed. She doesn't look real keen to go with you, Mosh, came the voice over the intercom. Are you sure you want to take the risk? They all come in the end, the creature reassured him in Mac's brusque tones. This one will too. Why? I wondered, backing myself into a corner. Because if you don't come with me, I'll crush your mind, was also a silent communication that only the two of us shared. You and whose army And just like that I felt his hand inside my head, his fingers digging into my brain, the pressure as he started to squeeze. I drew a short, sharp breath and doubled over, the world going grey with pain. And then his hand was gone, and I was standing with my hands on my knees, panting with fear. Like that, was it? I forced myself to take a long, deep breath and let it out slowly, and then I raised my head and eyed him carefully. So, where did you want to go?